Hey guys, welcome to Shawnee Hills Woodshop. Today, I'm about to show you how I built this assembly table. Now, before we build it, I want to go over a couple things about it. Now, it's quite a bit lower than my workbenches. This is not a workbench for me. This is a place for me to assemble projects that I'm working on. So I want to say if I'm working on a cabinet that's 36 inches high, I want to be right in the middle of that cabinet as I'm putting it together, or that table, or whatever it may be. So it is quite a bit lower. It has a removable top in case you get any spills or just gets worn out. I added a paper roll at the end and has a shelf at the bottom. The best part about this table is it's using cheap hollow core doors for the torsion box, but yet it's still solid and stable and has leveling feet and is perfectly level and flat. So let's build it.
I started off with two hollow core doors, one 36-inch and one 30-inch door. The 30-inch door I cut 6 inches off to where it would leave a 3-inch overhang all the way around. And here I'm just re-coring the bottom of that door. You can never have too many clamps. So I had a couple of 2x4s laying around that had been in my shop for quite some time and I felt had dried out as much as they were going to, and as you can tell this one's pretty crooked. So I got the rough measurements and cut all my pieces to approximate length. I then took those pieces to the joiner and got them perfectly flat on one face and one edge. And then took them to the planer and finished the other two sides. Now the core had time to dry, so I went back and trimmed that up with a hand plane just so there weren't any rough edges. And now I've put the 36-inch door back down, which will be the top, and using winding sticks, make sure that it's perfectly in plane. Now I'll start building the table upside down and then be able to flip it later. I knew I wanted overall dimensions of 74 inches, and so doing that allowed me to measure how long I wanted to make my stretchers. So here's the door that I had cut the bottom off of, and I'm basically just laying it in place right now, and I will build the frame around it. So I'm just using the 2x4s I cut earlier, making an L shape for the legs. And now I'll start gluing in the stretchers for the bottom of the table. Now when I flip the table over, the door that is inside will actually rest on these stretchers that I'm screwing in now. And now I'm putting on the leveling feet and I'm about ready to flip it over. I flipped the table over now and I've leveled it up using the feet, and now I'm trying to just get the top centered and exactly where I want it. I'll then drill out 3/4 inch holes using a spade bit just through the top layer. And then I'm using Craig screws because of the flat washer head they have to screw the door to the frame. The hollow core doors are good and flat, but they're not very strong. You could put a hammer through it easily. So I'm going to take a piece of 1/2 inch MDF and attach it to the top of the door just to give me a good solid surface that I can, when I'm putting joinery together using a hammer or mallet, I don't have to worry about putting a hole through the table itself. Now I'm just cutting it to fit roughly. It's going to be overhanging just a little bit, but I'll be cleaning that up with a trim router later. Now I sanded the top of the door so I'd be able to accept some glue, and now I'm just putting the glue on. I'm going to spread it out and attach the piece of MDF. You can never have too much glue, right? And when I started spreading it, I was actually surprised how much the door was soaking up the glue, so I ended up having to put even more on. I lined up the edges the best I could and then started adding clamps. I got as many clamps as I could just around the edge. And then came back and put a few heavy things in the center just to help weigh it down. Then I went around to the edge of the door and put screws in. There's really no reason to put screws in the center because there's nothing for the screws to grab onto. There's only the thin Luan covering of the door. For the top, I wanted to have a piece of hardboard. That way I could easily replace it in the future when it gets glue built up or gets banged up. I guess he thinks the drill's a little too loud. Since recording this, I've also bought him his own set of ear protection, as he was always wanting to wear mine. I put 4 screws, one in each corner of the hardboard top, and now I'm just using the trim router to go around and trim it and the MDF at the same time, trim it flush. I cut some strips of oak to put along the edge of the table just to cover up all the edges of the MDF and the hardboard so they won't get damaged. It makes for a nice finish. About after the second or third nail here, my air gun jammed on me and thought it was quicker just to grab my pass load as opposed to trying to fix the air gun right then. Left was to clean up the edges, and it's done.
Well, it's been about a year since I built the assembly table, and I've absolutely loved it. You know, I added things like the paper holder on the front. I put a few screws in to hold a brush and a dustpan. Some things I'm going to add in the future is I'd like to add some storage underneath for my hardware. All of my hardware is stored in these Stanley cases. And what I find is when I'm sitting at the assembly table, I'm often having to go back to my cabinets and get whichever one of these I need. So I'd like to make a system to where all these are just stacked and stored underneath the bench. It's easy to get to whenever I need it. As soon as I'm, need a certain type of screw, I know right where to grab and where to get it from. So that'll be an upcoming project. I couldn't be happier with how the assembly table turned out. The height is just perfect for me. Now again, this isn't for cutting dovetails or any kind of joinery, because then I'd be way too low. But for assembling a project, it puts the project right at the height that I need, and it gives me a good, perfectly flat surface to make sure that my project is perfectly in plane. If you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comments below. If I can, I'll try to reply to them. If you like what you see, click the subscribe button. I'll be trying to put out videos on a regular basis. And look forward to seeing you next time.